Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Dungeon Brew. Diana and I are continuing our conversation today on narrative design. Today, we're going to be talking about content creation, specifically quest creation. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Dungeon Brew.
Welcome back, everybody, to Dungeon Brew. Diana and I are going to be talking about quest creation. Kind of excited about this one. Quests are, in my opinion, the nuts and bolts of your game, but let's talk about what exactly they are. Diana, why don't you get us started? What is a quest? Why is it important?
Quests in games and TTRPGs. We're going to be talking about just quests in general here. They are the main tool, the primary tool in making the game move forward. It's what keeps your character moving forward and taking the steps to get from point A to point B. It's what gives the players their objectives. It gives them their choices. It is the events that end up moving that story along or heavily influencing the story as you go. So we are seeing these in games like rescues, when you have to go rescue a character, or if you have to gather certain tools, or if you have to go and kill enemies simply to level up, things like that. But it's the creation of the quest that we're going to be talking about today. Do you want to get us started with that?
Yeah, we are. We're going to talk about the creation specifically on how we put these together, but you're right. They're the building blocks that you see in the game. I oftentimes think of quests as being linear in nature. I mean, once you've completed one, you can't really go back and do it again unless you're playing a video game and you just didn't get the achievement you wanted, and so you reload it back up again. But specifically around a TTRPG, when you're engaging in any type of quest, it's kind of a one-way direction. It's a one-way street that you're going on and trying to complete whatever that is. And quests have been such an important part, I think, of just our own narrative for humanity and who we are and how we approach life, and the way that stories have been told across the ages, where you have this hero that's venturing forth into a world of the common day, into a region of supernatural wonder. And whether we're looking at the fantastical tales that have been told throughout time, or even the poor farm boy who's heading off to war, that has always kind of been like the story that has stuck with us, and like this
Mhm.
continuous adventure that we all take, whether you're playing a video game or you're in your real life trying to go out and understand the world around you.
Yeah, I think the greatest part of my childhood was when video games started coming out. I mean, before video games in my life was just board games and card games. I never cared about any of those
Mm-hmm.
things. I couldn't get that excited about it. But when story focused games with quests started coming out, that's when I was super excited and really just kind of embracing the imaginative part of who I am. I think that started with Zelda for me in particular. um Mario never quite seemed that same. I mean, it had its little quests and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it was when you had something a little more, Zelda felt more intense, I guess, with the kinds of quests that were there.
Yeah, and one of the things I like about Zelda specifically, which I think we played different versions of Zelda growing up, but every quest was a piece of the larger quest. Every quest had a purpose behind it. Even the side quest that you went and took prepared you for the end goal of what you were wanting to achieve in the game. And that's going to be a really important thing that we talk about today too.
Yeah, it's one of those the key elements of creating a quest, which there are five of. Um, I
Yeah,
feel,
yeah.
yeah.
Thomas Foster, he came up with this idea, right? He was a professor out of Michigan that taught lots of things around literary development and storytelling, and he came up with these five different elements that you should have in the process of your storytelling. And while I don't think he was necessarily speaking specifically to quests in TTRPGs or in video games, his design on how to tell a great story, I think, is something that we can utilize or should really hold up on a pedestal when we're telling our stories. The first one in that is the quester. So it is the person who is telling the story. We talked about this so much in previous videos. We don't have to, I want to say beat the dead horse. Is that what you do with a dead horse? I don't think that's what you want to say. I don't know, but essentially we don't have to go over this time and time again. Who is telling the story? in a TTRPG, it's usually heavily on the GM's shoulders, but it is a story that's being told by everybody around the table. So that's the first piece, is identifying who's telling this story.
So when you figure out as a party who you are, then it's time to look at that second element, the destination. What is the big goal there? Whether it's saving the princess, going to Mount Doom, it's the end goal that kind of overarches everything. It's at the forefront of the story. It's always that main destination, regardless of everything else that comes along the way.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but you want to make sure you're sprinkling that in too throughout the entirety of your storytelling. So not only do your players not forget what they're supposed to be doing, but maybe so that you don't. Because I know me as a GM, I'll get distracted. And sometimes my story takes a hard left because something distracts me, like a shiny thing. And I forget that they were supposed to be going to Mount Dune. Because it was like, oh, well, there was this cool little thing that we could go explore for 9 levels. Um, but yeah, once you have that destination set, then you really just want to determine the what needs to happen. So we're going to Mount Doom, but what are we doing there? We're throwing the ring into the fires, right? To destroy it.
Yeah.
It's the what. It's what are you doing? And that's the third step in this storytelling. That's what I'm looking for. Outline.
Yeah, and as long as you're keeping that interesting, then all the challenges and trials are going to pull the players in even more as you go. Again, remembering why, remembering what that, ultimate destination is. But I think when it comes to creating those challenges and those trials, I guess I'm curious, do you typically find it easier to keep all those challenges and trials specific to the reason, or how often, I guess, how far off of that main quest do you start adding those side quests that come in?
In good storytelling, when you're building quests, you want your trials and your challenges to always be tied back to that quest. And if they're getting something out of one of those side quests, it should be related back to the trial and challenge. Now, I can't say that Skyrim does this all the time outside of you just getting experience so that you can overcome the BBEG at the end type of thing. And some TTRPGs also struggle in this, where the entire purpose of a side quest is just to get more gold or get more experience so that you can buff up and be at a high enough level to tackle the end goal. But really great storytelling, really great narrative design has to do with incorporating each one of those into the primary quest line. I have to get certain gems, I have to get certain scales from this beast to have this certain armor so that I can withstand the fire breathing dragon that I have to face at the end to have that resistance to it. There's something that is achievable there that you're putting into those challenges and tribulations along the way.
Yeah, you've answered my question. I guess my question and all the mumbo jumbo that I said was was whether in TTRPGs you do those side quests where it's specific just for, XP or something, or are those things that in TTRPGs you kind of come up with along the way, or do you ever pre or I guess create them before the game begins for the sake of being there?
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that when it comes to narrative design in TTRPGs, do those types of side quests are they pre-created, or are those
Mm-hmm.
things that the GM just kind of has to come up with depending on what the players are doing?
So sometimes the players do take a turn or make a choice that you didn't see coming. So you're walking through the city, and so they've shown a lot of interest into one of the shopkeepers, and they want to know their backstory. And the shopkeep, in the course of the dialogue back and forth, makes some mention of his daughter or his friend or somebody that is going under hardship, and you didn't think that the characters were going to want to go and explore that, and they suddenly decide they want to. And so then you have to create a quest line to maybe follow that. But I personally like to interweave that into the bigger storyline too. I may not have had that pre-planned or decided like all the rest of the quests and side quests I've developed, but after that session, now I'm building a backstory, a family history, motivations that bring me again back into that, so that my characters are pulled back to the main quest line and remember what it is that they're trying to achieve. So we don't again spend 9 levels, investigating the sickly daughter of the shopkeep and forget that we need to throw this ring into Mount Doom.
Yeah, good point. Um, Now, with that, the fifth element in the five elements of a quest making here, it's the real reason to go. Why does this need to happen? And I'm wondering if you wanted to cover that, because when I first read that, I was like, but isn't that already the part of that destination, part of that goal? How are you incorporating that bigger why when it comes to TTRPGs?
Yeah, so the third step is the what, and I'll just keep using Lord of the Rings because you and I both love them incredibly. But the what in Lord of the Rings is throwing the ring into the fires of Mount Doom to destroy it. That's what we're doing. The why is so that Sauron isn't empowered to rule over everybody by having this in his possession. It's the meaning behind the what. This is something that I think is important for the GM to understand, to reinforce this, and to maybe have come alive through the NPCs that your characters encounter in the world around you. But for the characters themselves, or for the players themselves, they may have to determine their own why. What is it that motivates them to want to accomplish this? Now, I have all my characters write backstories before we start gameplay where they determine why they want to do something. So, right now, I'm running a campaign that is out of the age of Hyperborea with Conan, and all my characters are setting off to kill Conan the Barbarian, who's become the king of Aquilonia. And they have to put in their backstories their why they want to do that. I know what they need to do. I know why I would want them to do it, but I want to make sure that their motivations are aligned with the motivations that I have, and that I can reinforce their motivations through the NPCs in the story to make them more invested and more embedded within the game. So that why is why we're doing it. It's not just the what.
Yeah, I think for me, when I was originally, I guess, studying those five elements, I'm coming at it from that storytelling mentality, and it
Mm-hmm.
just seems so much more in depth when it comes to the TTRPGs. Like there's so much more that goes into it because you're usually giving that big why in some sort of it's being provided to the reader or to the video gamer kind of, in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of why I wanted you to cover that in the realm of TTRPGs there.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, when you read a book, when you watch a movie, when you're playing a video game, those things are usually offered to you, and the developer is hoping that you yourself are going to be as invested in that why as what their initial conceptualization was. But in a TTRPG, which I think makes it really unique, is that it is something that you come together with the group to create that why together, or at least make sure that your whys are closely enough related that somebody doesn't just go off and suddenly become
Mhm.
the enemy to the rest of the party. We don't have to get down
So,
that. We don't have to go down that path right now. Maybe another video.
yeah. Um, Speaking of which, before we go on, if you viewers are enjoying the content here, please go ahead and like the channel, subscribe, comment, click that little bell so you can be notified whenever
Mm-hmm.
we put up another video here. But I was actually curious, okay, because I'm not a GM, and so that's why I like to ask you these questions as the not GM, um, to see kind of how the GM approaches these things. So we know, there's the general quest lines in games and in
Mm-hmm.
stories. Whether it's going and, like I said, rescuing the princess, finding the Zephyr Blade,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is.
Thanks, Doraleous.
um,
Yeah.
when it comes to TTRPGs, is there any quest that you do not want to put in a game that you are just like, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole? Any kind of quest, the specific type of quest?
I don't think so. And honestly, I think that John is probably in the same note. I know he and I were playing a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, I want to do this. And he got ready to be like, no, you can't. He's like, no, you can do anything. That's fine. Like, if that's what you want to go do, then that's what you can go do. And I'm kind of in the same boat. There's not really anything that I steer too far away from. And that probably just comes from my own philosophy in gaming. Now, there are certain things that I may not put out into a book that I publish or a game that I would create for the world because it's maybe a little too taboo. It's not PC. It's not something that I think that is meant for a large audience. But my personal philosophy is that storytelling is meant to brush up against what is not normal or nomenclature. Is that the word? Things that essentially challenge our ideas and our beliefs around the world for us to explore those things for personal development, if anything. And so I usually allow my players to explore the world in whichever way they want to, including quests that they want to explore, but there are always consequences for the choices they make, whether those are positive or negative.
Yeah, that's just where that GM constantly has to be on all the time to come up with or figure out what that consequence is going to be or
Uh,
punishment.
a few things about quests, though, and I think these are just, I don't know if this is really gold information. We're getting into flowchart stuff here in a minute, but these are things that I think that all GMs should consider when they're approaching quests from a narrative standpoint. One, kind of like we mentioned earlier, those quests that you create should always reinforce the main storyline. You and I just did videos on plot arcs, on linear and complex storytelling, and those are both really good videos to watch. But making sure that your quests are always pushing that main storyline forward in some way. Also, making sure that your quests aren't just glorified to-do lists. I think that it's super frustrating when it's like, hey, just run this wood down to the local farmer and now go pick up this bag of sheep wool and take it, back into the market and make sure that the individual can sell it, the trader can sell it. Some of those things are okay here and there, those fetch a letter, pass off this to kind of get a little extra XP, especially if you're just trying to get them into the next level to face the next quest that's coming about. But glorified to-do lists for long are really frustrating. This is why I get tired of playing World of Warcraft. Sorry, Blizzard. But that gets really frustrating. If the quest line doesn't really fit into the overall story, I get bored with it. And players, again, should always know what their main goal is, and every action they take should push them towards those objectives in some way. And I think those are like key things when you're building quests to think about so that your players, I guess, just don't lose that immersion in the game.
Yeah. And I think as long as you're keeping the quests tied to the overall purpose or the overall destination, or reason, I guess, is going to be the main key there in keeping everybody interested. Because if you're just, randomly going out and, killed 50 orcs, in this area, then yeah, it's gonna get pretty boring pretty fast.
Yeah. Well, 50 orcs I might be able to contend with, but going out and killing 50 pigs and bringing back their feet is just like, what?
Touche, touche. You're right.
All right, so let's talk just a little bit now about quest development, talking about building a flowchart. As a GM, I don't always do this well. I do this more in my probably book writing than I do as a GM, but creating a flowchart I think is a helpful skill to have in quest building for narrative design. This is where you're essentially putting an overview of the quest structure and you're looking at the different options that players may choose during the course of gameplay and then what those consequences might be.
Yeah, this is not what a pantser does or a what are the discovery writer. We don't necessarily sit here and make flowcharts. So this is it's something that I think I'm realizing now coming into a series. I, have a few books already in the series, but getting to a third book, you kind of realize why that flowchart is helpful there to keep things tied into, again, that main storyline so you're not forgetting things along the way.
So you've played a lot of different video games where there have been quests that you've been sent on that have options along the way of things that you can do. That if you've played the game enough times, you realize that no matter what option you choose, you still kind of circle back to the main quest line, and you're still on the right path to finish that quest line. Do you have any examples that you might be able to share about where you've seen that at?
I am immediately thinking of Fable, but at the
Yeah.
same time, it's sort of the same. It's the same kind of, I guess, end result, not end result, end goal, but you get to choose, I guess, the result. You get to choose what kind of outcome, whether you're going to be good or bad. But no, that's always the immediate first that comes to mind. I think, I mean, Skyrim, you can go on all the quests, separately in different directions, but ultimately you're still kind of coming down to that same storyline in the end.
Yeah. And that's much of what you do as a GM too, and when you're doing your TTRPGs. Sorry, my dogs are like beating around in their cages right now. But that's what you do in a TTRPG too.
Kennels.
When you're looking out kennels, that is the right nomenclature. Why can I not say that word?
I'm not even going to try. I know what you mean.
You guys write it in the comments, and you get whatever. Okay. So flowcharts. So with a flowchart as a GM, this is a really helpful thing to, again, look at the different options that characters may have. So one of the good examples to use, and Skyrim does this all the time. Go stop the bandit in the mountains, right? You have this option of like, this is your first little box of like, I'm going to go stop the bandit in the mountain. Now, then your players can go off to go seek out that bandit. Maybe they choose to stop the bandit in the mountains. Maybe they decide to work with the bandit and help bring in money, or talk to the bandit about moving his operation to another mountain for another city, where he can continue his work, and then you get a 10% cut on something. And then with both of those options, they're both going to come back to a single conclusion where you return to the quest giver and tell them that you took care of the bandit. So regardless if you killed him, regardless if you worked with him, regardless if you let him go, whatever you chose, you're able to go back and collect your reward because you dealt with the bandit. That's really what you're looking at in terms of flowcharts with quests that you're creating, where you're looking at the different options and seeing how it pulls back to a singular conclusion that can allow the overall plot, the overall quest to continue pushing forward.
Yeah, I was gonna say, wouldn't that, I guess, in some way turn into a future quest too? If you didn't kill the bandit and you
Mm-hmm.
continue along your storyline, then you get to another point where suddenly you're dealing with the bandit somewhere else. You have a whole new approach to that quest. I'm trying to think. I don't remember what game it was that I played. Where that happened. And I remember stopping and thinking, wait a second, I didn't expect him to come back into the picture. Now I'm gonna get in trouble with the king or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
because you didn't actually kill this person. You just let them go and let them, go and hound another town or another city or something.
Yeah, I know
But
there's games that do this. I mean, I've played Baldur's Gate, Shadows of Am quite a bit, and there's ones in there where you get to go and let certain people go, and then maybe they pop up later in the story, and you're like, wait, what? I didn't think this person's like, well done, game developers. Like, well done. Like, that is kind of an exciting moment when you make a choice in a game and you see that it unfolds because of that choice that you made later on. Which, again, like in a TTRPG, you have the option for that to just be an endless series of whatever you want it to be.
yeah.
If you decided to work with that bandit, then you may have money coming in regularly. You may have him then under threat by the guards, and he's asking you to stop the guards that are, infringing upon his work. What is the word I'm looking for? His business, his plot. If you just let him go, maybe he pops up later again. If you kill him, maybe his brother is now coming after you for revenge. Like, there's always something that can come out of a decision that's being made by the characters.
Yeah. Or your fellows, your party members are not okay with letting him go or letting him stop. Then you got to start, I mean, I guess working in secret would be kind of hard when you have the players all there, but I've seen that done too.
Yeah, I've seen that done in video games. In TTRPGs, it's not as common. This was more common in older editions, like in Beck Me campaigns, where you could have hirelings that would come on and work for you, that have their own motivations, their own personalities, and they may turn their nose at a decision that you make and then impact how effective they are, which the GM gets to run them in battle. So, you've upset your cleric and now you're getting injured in battle, but she doesn't like that you helped that bandit, so she might let you bleed a little bit longer,
Mhm.
So that can always be fun too.
Yeah. All right.
Um,
Is there something that we didn't cover?
there's a couple of other things that I just want to talk about real quick. One is just in quest development, make sure that you're meeting the challenge level of your characters.
Mm,
You have to recognize that difficulty changes, and so there are mechanics that are put into place with that. So as your characters increase in level, make sure that your challenges are increasing in level, which kind of leads me to the second thing. There's like 33 different type of quest designs, and we wouldn't have time to cover all of them in a single video, at least, and be able to do anything else with our day. But one of the ones that I thought that I would mention is called arrowhead questing. There's actually been some articles written about arrowhead questing, and this is the idea where you start off with many enemies at the forefront of your questing that your players are able to combat against and defeat. And as you move down the quest, you kind of come down into an arrowhead so that you have less and less enemies as you move further down your quest line until you get to that BBEG at the end that is now stronger. So you're getting fewer enemies that are
mhm.
stronger as you're moving down the quest. And I think that's a really good design to utilize in addition to everything else when it comes together, putting together those pieces for your quest.
So in TTRPGs, when I think about, I mean, you just kind of brought the map of Conan Exiles in my head.
Yeah.
When you start out in Conan Exiles, you start at the bottom in the
Hmm.
desert. If you stay within the desert, you're staying at like low level,
Hmm.
kind of players. If you go off to the jungle, you've got these high level things that are going to wipe you off really quick. Same thing up north.
Hmm.
Um, is that ever done in TTRPGs? Like where there's just certain areas that you go into, certain areas of your map or something? Or is there a default sort of quest, I guess quest type, like you had said? Like is that what you just explained, the arrowhead quest? Is that the default? Is there a default?
I don't know if default's the best word, but I think that it is common. I think that it is common that you start off your players in a small hamlet in a village with maybe that's being attacked by wolves, or there's a small cave with a bandit nearby that are pretty low level that the characters can handle. A lot of early concepts of quest design for early levels and older editions was like going defeating the bugbear and his little minions that were in a cave, and it was something that the players could handle. And as they expanded and ventured out further into the world, the challenges got harder, the monsters got bigger, and there was more at stake. But in a TTRPG, John and I again both do this because we like dark, gritty fantasy. We like to present things that will kill our characters at level one and you'll have to rebuild. We like to introduce that threat early on so that our players know not every battle that's presented to me by the GM is one that I can win. Sometimes that sets up the scope of the overall goal. A dragon flew overhead. I can't beat a dragon. I'm a little farm boy with a stick sword. And so that's not going to happen. But now I have a quest to go find that dragon and, seek my revenge for it killing my family or whatever the case may be. Just recently in the Conan campaign that we're running, they came into a catacomb where there were skeletons that they were able to defeat, but there was also a poltergeist, which they could not. So they were able to defeat the skeletons, and then they had to retreat from the poltergeist, knowing that it was too powerful for them to overcome, and gives them something to come back and explore later on. And so I think that the TTRPG offers you options, but yes, most commonly you're starting in a small area, and as you expand out, the challenges get more difficult.
Yeah. So World of Warcraft, that would be that arrowhead kind of concept, right?
Oh yeah,
Is that,
yeah.
am I saying it right? Was it arrowhead?
Yeah, yeah, it's Arrowhead, and
Okay.
you're right. And they even kind of trap you in there, like you can't move forward, or they used
Yeah.
to. Old vanilla Warcraft, you used to be stuck in the area, and you couldn't even leave until you were a certain level. Now I think you can just kind of like run out. Maybe last time I played it, you could just like run out and go wherever you wanted to go do, and Godspeed. But it used to be you couldn't even leave the beginner area until you were a certain
Mm.
level. You had to kill so many wolves and pigs, boars, before you were able to move on.
Yeah. Yeah. That must have been before my time, before or not my time, but
You
before
youngin.
when I first started.
All right, so I hope that this has been entertaining. I hope that it's been helpful. I know that we approached quests a little bit differently in this video. John and I have done another video on the types of quests that you will see in TTRPGs and how to structure those and build those out. This one we wanted to look more at just like the content and the overall design of what a quest would look like. And next time we're talking about the NPC, I believe, and how to develop those.
Oh, oh, that'll be fun.
All right, we will catch you guys all next time. Take care.
Welcome to Dungeon